our last show, we took on the challenge of redoing a kitchen, our kitchen, and our goal was to be as resourceful with the renovation as possible. We deconstructed very carefully so that we could reuse everything in the space. We laid an amazing floor using old wooden beams that we cut up into tiles, covered up the walls with some salvaged bricks that were reclaimed from demolished buildings, and old metal roofing off of my parents' garage found its way to the ceiling. We used inexpensive cement mix and broken wine bottles to create some beautiful rustic countertops, experimented with a lot of new green building materials. The original cabinets from the space took an intentional beating to achieve just the right rustic, distressed look. We used leftover bits to custom build a couple of additional cabinets, and today we are all wrapped up in finishing things off. You're going to see us creatively disguise some of our old appliances and share our thoughts on when to buy, what to buy. We'll be planning up our countertop garden bed, adding a few butcher block style elements built out of scrap lumber, and lots of other salvage additions like lighting, old doors, hardware, vintage accessories. We're also going to talk about the wonderful properties of copper with some handcrafted sinks and other customized additions like a kids' kitchen center, lots of greenery, architectural elements, and whatever else transpires as we move things along. The Resourceful Renovating continues and comes to a completion today on Be Organic. The appliances were the next big thing that we needed to address. And as we all know, there are arguments for all sides of all of the different options that are out there, and we could devote an entire show to just that topic. But for the purposes of this project, these are the choices that we ended up making. Originally, we were going to replace the water heater that was in the kitchen space with a tankless version like the one that we have over at our offices. But in the end, we went with the school of thought that sometimes the greenest purchase is the one not taken. It's not that old, it still works great, and unless something is ridiculously inefficient, it didn't make a lot of sense to dispose of it and consume something else. So we ended up converting the old pantry that was here to house it and the wall oven, because the one appliance that we did end up having to replace was the stovetop and the oven. And then we had to make another decision. Do we want to go with gas or electric? And there really are advantages to both. Again, an argument for all sides. We ended up going with a gas stovetop because it was the best fit for our lifestyle, our cooking needs for both personal and work use, and then an electric wall oven. And I think when it comes to all of the appliances and things that we use that require energy, it really comes down to being mindful about how we use them, being conscientious, and not being wasteful. The other appliances we're making do with what we originally had: the dishwasher, the refrigerator, and the microwave that was in the space. And sometimes when you replace things at different intervals, things start to get a bit mismatched, but there are clever, creative ways that you can disguise the look of your appliances. For instance, this is our refrigerator back here, and we created a bit of a built-in look by creating a cabinet for around it. We put the doors on pivot-style hinges. That way, they can slide right back inside alongside the edge of the fridge. They don't stick out into the room. You have easy access to things still, but we can close it off when we want to. We also kind of did the same thing with the microwave and built a cupboard for around it with doors to close it off. The microwave is actually an appliance that we rarely ever use, and I see it eventually probably being eliminated from the space. But for now, we can conceal it, and we still have easy access to it when we do want to use it. And whenever you're creating cabinetry for around your appliances, you just want to be, considerate and conscientious of leaving enough ventilation and room for the air to circulate around your appliances. That's very important. Otherwise, it's a fun way to kind of hide some of the things that you don't want to look at all of the time. So we're going to finish up with things here, and then we're going to move on to some other built-in features with the countertops. Remember the cutout we left in the first countertop that we poured? Well, this is for our countertop garden bed, and I've been wanting to do one of these for a very long time. Our friend Matt made us this nice stainless tray that we're going to stick in here. It's about 6 inches deep, 16 by 24, so I really have a nice area to plant up. And I'm going to plant this up just like I would any other container. I'm going to allow for some drainage at the bottom, so I'm going to use some pea gravel. I'm going to put about an inch layer inside there, and then top that off with a really rich organic soil mixed with some compost. After that, I'm going to put all of our favorite herbs and lettuces in there, the things that we really use in the kitchen on a daily basis. So I need to get things potted up here.
Sit back, take a load of me off. I know where you are, but blue skies are bluer than your own eyes, and I'm full up on clouds.
You'll notice I planted the mint up in a container, and that's because their roots tend to take over, and in this small of a space, I definitely don't want that. We do have the garden bed positioned so that we can take advantage of as much natural light as possible through the door and the window, but on occasion, these guys may need a bit of assistance. So I'm gonna go ahead and install a grow light underneath this cabinet here, and there really are a lot of options when it comes to grow lights, so you really wanna find one that is as efficient as possible depending on your space requirements and your budget. Now we have an outlet that was installed inside the back of this cabinet. We drilled a hole in the bottom, so all I have to do is screw that grow light in underneath and plug it in.
Let's go.
I'll just keep it watered up, and I have instant access to all of the fresh herbs and things that I like to use in the kitchen on a daily basis. The countertop that we built for the cabinet in the back of the kitchen was a butcher block style countertop, and we're going to do that same process for the cutting board that is getting inset into the concrete countertop for the island. And it really is a great way to utilize scraps of lumber that you have lying around. It's an easy process. Butcher block basically means assembled wood, a bunch of pieces of wood that are glued up together. And we're going to reuse, we have a lot of scraps of old flooring left around, and you can create a butcher block style countertop or tabletop or cutting board, either edge grain or end grain. We're going to use the edge grain, and since we're using old flooring, it takes a couple more steps to get the flooring ready to actually glue together. We have to cut the tongue and groove off, we have to plane off the grooves on the back side, but first off we want to work with pieces that are of the same size, correct?
Right, we're going to want to make sure that we get the thickness, so the way it's going to sit on the top, that they all need to be relatively
kind of close.
Yeah,
and we're making a really thick cutting board. It's what, 2.5 inches thick?
2.5 inches thick, starting. It'll be a little lower than that when we get done.
And that it'll create a very durable finish for our cutting board, as well as we have plenty of thickness, so it'll have a long life if we ever need to resurface it and sand it down as it starts to wear and getting a lot of, you know, cutting marks on it. So, all right, let's walk them through the...
Okay, well, the first thing we need to do, let's get rid of the tongue side, and then we'll go and get our thickness for the 2.5 inch after we get done with that. So I'm just going to set this one up, we'll run this through, get our tongue side cut off, and then we'll get the other side at 2.5.
To run this through here to remove the grooves on the back side as well as the finish on the top, right?
Yep.
Okay, and you could leave that on there. You would just see those holes in the end when you glued them together.
Just be the edges of all you'd see.
Nice piece of wood.
Perfect, isn't it? Those surface planers are nice.
All right, and then we're just going to basically glue all of these together, right?
Yep, now we'll just glue them together and they'll end up turning up just like this.
Okay. And we glue both sides and put them inside some pipe clamps.
Yep. Now you're going to want to use a good premium wood glue. This is an eco-friendly wood glue that we're going to use here. So if you want to get that out of the way,
okay,
we'll set this up and we'll use this. And the only thing I do here is I put a stop block so we can kind of get them all the same size, same edge grain be the same. And then we'll just take and we'll glue one end of it. And I put it on very liberal. And we'll get this side, and then all I do is sandwich it with the next one. So then I can put it like this, move this one out of the way, and I'll lay this one down and glue the next one. And if you want to take the time, you can cut all these ends off ahead of time, but we're going to cut them all down to size anyway, so at this point it really doesn't matter. We can just make one cut instead of making multiple cuts all on the little pieces. And even on these short boards, we're about 2 inches long from what the finished product is going to be. So like even this bit of a tongue that we have there, that's all going to get cut off, so we won't ever see that. When we get done clamping it up, because you're going to put some bar clamps on here and clamp it this way and have even pressure on both sides. I'd put clamps on the top and the bottom, and then clean off as much glue as you can. It just makes it easier for cleanup when you get done with the edge.
Then all those little pieces turn into one beautiful big block of wood.
Yeah, and if you notice, they all came in pretty even. I mean, we're going to run through the planer one more time, or we can use the belt sander to smooth it off. And I like to get rid of a little bit of this extra glue right before we send it through the planer one more time. These are on the blades and the knives. But then let's go ahead and send that right back.
Basically, now we're just going to shape it up and smooth it off, right?
Right, yep. We'll start getting to size.
Okay.
So let's bring that back over the planer. Raise this up a little bit.
And it's important, if you are working with a planer, that you're building all of your pieces to your butcher block in the sections that'll fit through your planer, and then you'll end up piecing them all together if you're working with a really large piece, right?
Right. Let's see where we're at there. A little too tall. Bring it back out. Try that once. How pretty is that?
Nice. Very nice. Now we'll just round out the edges, cut down the ends, and then we want to saturate it with a food grade butcher block oil, a mineral oil, and it's ready to use.
Yep, we're going to want to put probably 5 to 10 coats
Okay.
since it's new to get it really sealed up. And then you can put beeswax on it also to really get it so water doesn't penetrate.
And then you probably want to reseal it every 3 months or so?
Every
usually?
couple months.
Okay,
Yep.
all right, beautiful. And this is a beautiful cutting board, an excellent way to reuse that old flooring. It fits nice in our cutout. It'll be easy to take in and out to clean it off or to refinish it as need be. But I think we're at the point now where we can put everything back into the space and get using this kitchen.
Well, today started bad. With a kick to the head, only been an hour since I went to bed. Oh well, I guess I won't sleep again.
Completion is the best feeling, and I'm proud to say that we are finally at that point with this project. It was a big one, but it was one that really felt good every step of the way. And we ended up having a lot of fun with the whole work with what you have mentality. We got to explore a lot of different ways of doing things, and it's kind of fun to look back on the original plan that we had. It was a very rough outline because a lot of it had to get determined as we worked through the process depending on what we had to work with. And a lot of the design stemmed from the cabinets that we had pulled out of the original space. You know, what kind of cabinets we had, how many. The design of the island, for instance, all stemmed from the wooden panels that we removed from the original counter. And a lot of the cabinets we were able to rework and make some updates to by using some ready-made systems. For instance, this cupboard was perfect for our recycling center, and they have a lot of rail systems and organizational things that make it very easy for people to update old cupboards. All of the hardware that is on the cabinets, we rummaged around, worked with things that I had sitting around in bins. We went out and purchased a few that we needed for the drawers from a salvage store just to get us to the number that we needed. We also ended up going with copper sinks. Copper was a naturally great material to complement the old wood and the concrete and the glass. It really went well with the whole salvaged look. And some of the interesting things about copper are that copper has a living finish. It has a natural antimicrobial property, so it self-sanitizes and it destroys any sort of bacteria or viruses, and we kind of all know what a breeding ground the bottom of our kitchen sinks are, so the copper sink was the perfect choice, not only aesthetically, but also it helps contribute to a really clean environment. The lighting in the space, we ended up reusing all of the recessed lighting that was here originally. We just reconfigured and moved things around a bit. We made two additions with this antique lighting that we had laying around, just rewired it. It works beautifully above the island. And when you're working with salvaged pieces, you really get a lot of things that have a lot of character, the built-in stories. We also added a couple of salvaged doors to the space, and then the ones that we removed from here, we ended up reusing elsewhere. You'll also notice that we ended up using a lot of barn board to cover the walls, to build some cabinetry with, and we actually had to purchase this barn board. We have a friend that tears down barns and then repurposes all of that material. So it was a great source for us to find some more salvaged lumber that we needed. We also came up with kind of a fun way to get some additional storage space. This is basically a wall that we opened up and just exposed all of the 2x4s. We ended up just framing them out to dress it up and then adding shelves in between the 2x4s. It works perfect for, you know, of course we store a lot of things in jars, and it's the perfect depth for that. So instead of just having a blank wall here that served no other purpose, we opened it up and now we have all of this great storage. We then installed the other salvage door on this barn door rail system, and you can get these at any home improvement store. They're very easy to install, and it works out pretty slick because then the door doesn't open up into the room. It just slides right in front of this shelving. We can still close off the room off the kitchen, and this was kind of one of our more fun, clever ideas, or at least we think so. We did have a few cupboards left over from the space, but we ended up using those in this room, hung them on the back wall. That way we kind of have an extension of the kitchen, and we have some additional storage for canned goods and things, and the cabinetry really ended up looking nice in this space as well. And we really tried to make good use of every nook and cranny, especially when we tore things apart. The old pantry that we had to reconfigure to accommodate the wall oven and the water heater, we had some great storage opportunity at the top and the bottom of it, and instead of just walling that off, we left it open, did some built-in shelves. We also have some great storage down below. So no space went to waste. I also wanted to create a fun area for my daughter. She loves to do her own recipes, her own little concoctions. So we used whatever leftover material we had and built her own cupboard. That way it stores all of her little supplies and her cookbooks, and it makes it a lot more fun for her when she's in the kitchen and helping out with things. We then kind of rummaged around and looked for some architectural detail to add to the space. Everything was kind of flat. So we had some old columns and added them to some of the corners and on the wall here and there, cut one down to add underneath the island. We also, when we were rummaging around, found some old floor grates, and they make for great trivets. We just cleaned them up with the wire wheel, sealed them, and it really makes a nice hot plate. It's very decorative. We also wanted the place to have a very fresh and lively feel to it, so you'll notice that we have lots of things growing here and there, a lot of items that we use in the kitchen on a daily basis. There's other greenery scattered around to help keep the air nice and clean, and you know what? I love it in here. It's worn and torn in what I like to call a very charming, salvaged way. We're gonna have a completely different kitchen experience in here than what we had before, and all of the resourcefulness really paid off, doing it ourselves, working with what we have, because when you put a hard dollar amount on it, the whole project came in at less than $5,000.
Don't be afraid to country now. In a wood stump with a jackknife, cross your T and dot your I, carve your name next to mine, made my mark and left my name. Maybe you could do the same. Grooves on a window pane, made my mark and left my name. Won't you stand next to me and tell me who you want me to be? Only your eyes can see. Won't you stand next to me?
You know, in one day we took everything out. And that's where it went really, really fast. And we thought, you know, we were going to be done in a month, which wasn't necessarily the case. But I think when we started taking it apart and we had the mindset of we need to reuse whatever we can when we were taking things out, it was I was surprised as to how much we actually had to work with.
And it may have been a sin, but I'll press the ink to skin. Now everyone can see you're a part of me, almost like a guarantee that everyone can see. The years roll by, soon I'll surely die.
And there really wasn't a plan. We just went in, as soon as we had the space open, you said.
You just kind of start putting it all back together. And that's the fun. I mean, that takes a little bit out of the, sometimes when you have too much of a plan ahead of time, it makes it, then you're frustrated because you're not going according to the plan always, per se. But when you're kind of doing the plan as you go along, it's not as frustrating because you're figuring it out as you go and you're making it work.
Jackknife, cross the T and dot your I, carve your name next to mine, carve your name next to mine. In a wood stump with a jackknife, cross the T and dot your I, carve your name next to mine. 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 Carve your name next to mine.
I can't stand unfinished.
Completion.
Completion.
Well, when you live here also.
Yeah, live here, work here. Gotta hang with them 24/7. Get on each other's nerves.
Just a little.
And we have very different ways of doing things, which can irritate each other.
Well, you like everything crooked.
I do like everything.
And I like everything square. So it makes it a little difficult.
It does, but in the end, you know, we end up being a pretty good team. Surprisingly, we get it done, and it always turns out pretty good. Mm-hmm. Or at least we like it.
Well, you get the vision.
That was fun.
Yeah, it was fun.
Makes it more fun when you have a challenge like that.